So some of this will be a repeat from last month. We kind of ended with this healthcare discussion. Some of it I want to come back with. We talked about the word redundant, so I want to make sure we talk about that again. But so 517, again, the scope, it says this article pertains to the electrical construction and installation criteria in a healthcare facilities that serve human beings. So again, these things don't apply to a veterinarian clinic or other things like that. I mean, it would be fine to apply them, but that's not the scope of this section. In the 2023, they added a new annex, which is Annex K. If you have a code book that has the handbook, you'll see there's a note just below the scope there that discusses the Annex K. And first question is Annex K required or not required to be followed?
It's informative.
No. So annexes, we are not required to follow. But this section is new to the 2023. So during the 2023 cycle, informative Annex K was added to guide the safe use and installation of medical electrical equipment, or MME, that's in homes and residences or residential. So we are beginning, what they noticed during the cycle is there's beginning more and more at-home medical equipment in people's homes. Here's a picture of a hospital bed, although this is not really, I don't think, the intent of Annex K. We'll see some more here in a second, but this kind of gives you the idea. When I was a kid, my grandpa was paralyzed from the chest down. He worked about 30 years for GM, and right at retirement, he had a tumor that grew in his spine. And this was 40 years ago, and they didn't have the technology before they finally realized what his problem was, and he ended up being paralyzed right at retirement. So I'm very familiar with the hospital bed. The new ones, they got a lot of plastic on them, if you noticed it, especially in the hospitals. He had it was all metal. The whole thing was a metal hospital bed. But Annex K, if you look, so that's going to be in the back of your code book if you want to look at this. So it addresses the increasing use of medical electrical equipment in homes and residential care facilities. The annex emphasizes the need for a reliable power supply, especially for life-saving or life support type equipment, to ensure, it says patient safety. I probably could have used a different word beside patient. So MEE is equipment with an applied part, or is what the code uses. So I thought, what is an applied part? What it is, it's a connection part. It's a connected part that the machine connects to a person that transmits or detects energy to or from the patient. So we see there's
That's an air machine.
a picture of a oxygen machine.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long those have existed for at-home use, but they for sure exist today. So if you're a person that you rely on that thing for your life to be able to breathe a high concentration of oxygen, you don't want that thing to lose power, especially in the middle of the night, if you're sleeping with this oxygen tube on. So so while this annex is for information purposes only and not a mandatory part of the code, it provides some critical guidance on how these devices interact with the home's electrical system. So here we see a picture of a CPAP. I know lots of people that wear those now. And I think for some people that is almost essential. They have to wear one of these things at night. So again, this is used for diagnostic treatment or monitoring of a patient, or for compensation or alleviate some disease, injury, or disability. Some of the all these pictures I came from myself or whatever. I mean, I made this with AI, but I was trying to find like another one would be like a dialysis machine, so you can do that at home now. So again, so more things are becoming stuff you can bring home and do with you. And for dialysis, as I was reading, that if you go to the hospital, you got to do that like 2 or 3 times a week, roughly. And they're doing it a little bit faster to where if you could do at-home dialysis, they said that's easier on your body. They're doing it a slower process as they're cleaning your blood. And that is easier on the person, that you could just kind of hook them up at nighttime and let that thing run. It sounds like over a longer stretch than doing it in a fast, short time. So there's benefits again for this. So here comes the part where, so what do we do if somebody has, or what's the recommendation of Annex K for somebody who has these types of appliances or machines at home? It says, so first, individual branch circuit, it is highly recommended to supply life-supporting equipment with its own individual branch circuit to prevent overloading or accidental power removal. So part of this, why it's an informational note, is because nobody knows who's going to live in that home when it's built. That's obviously one of the reasons why. But if the house is already built, say it's a friend of yours or whatever, here are some things that you could be looking for. So load limits, if an individual branch circuit is not available, MEE loads should be limited to 50% or less of the circuit's capacity. So you'd have to do some looking about what all is on this circuit. And you'd want to make sure that machine, once it's connected, is not beyond 50% of whatever that.
Where did the 50% come from? Where's that? I mean, that seems like a very arbitrary number to me.
The only thing I can think isn't, there's some of this also back in 210, right? If you have an appliance that's fastened in place versus an appliance that is portable, right? So what are those? What are those numbers? Is it 50% and 80%?
50 and 80.
Yeah. So I'm assuming they maybe stole some of those numbers, but again, this isn't code, so they don't have to really substantiate why they did this necessarily, where these numbers came from. So also prohibit, you want to ensure that the circuit that is, or really the receptacle this piece of equipment is plugged into is not on a wall switch. Right, that'd be bad. If you're thinking of your CPAP machine and it's on and you go to bed and you're already, you beat your wife to sleep and then she comes in and shuts the switch off and killed your CPAP machine with a wall switch. So you're going to wake up or die. I don't know what you would do. Something would go wrong there.
If she got an insurance policy out, there's a hint right there.
Yeah. You got something?
I do. I don't see any practical application in a single family house. Residential care units, all day long, you would have to, if this becomes, if Annex K, usually they throw an annex in there before they do a code update, making your requirements, it's a new requirement, which could happen who knows when. But I don't see any way that you could enforce that or even suggest it for a single family house. Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
But like I said, in a residential care facility, yeah, that's something that the designer might have to take into consideration, and that they probably do.
Yeah. So
that's already addressed in that sense.
I'm seeing it from, you have, an existing property, and now somebody is in need of this equipment in their house.
Correct.
And now you have the Sparky coming in, and he's wanting to do the stuff hopefully the permit's been pulled, this would give you something to try to do the installation by.
I don't see any way to enforce that.
Well, I'm not, right now it's an Annex K.
Right, if that were a
And-
code section.
And I'm not, and obviously you can't, we've already established you cannot enforce it yet.
Right,
Yes.
say that morphs into a code section.
Okay.
Something that's covered under 517.
Okay.
But that would be if the guy, just like he said, if a guy's gonna go pull a permit and it becomes part of the code section, this gives you the ability to be able to say, okay, this guy's gonna they're gonna have this person go in that room and remodeling the room. It gives them the ability to say, okay, from information K, they make that there, you be able to enforce, okay, what stuff are you using in this house for this person? I think that's where they're going for, Ted, is that,
I don't disagree, I just see it as kind of far-fetched.
I'm
I don't
with you.
disagree right now, but if somebody was remodeling, so, let me use an instance, we used a, addition that we did for a handicapped child. There was no code reference for any of what she needed to take care of her.
Right.
That would be a perfect example of where this code would come into play, is this was an existing house, they're doing an addition for the special needs child, and that this stuff would come into play at that time, because you would have to enforce that. Because she did have carrying stuff, or this or that, or she did have life equipment that she needs on, that I could see why they're coming up with that.
So for now, like, so this is only, we'll say, a recommendation.
Correct.
So, if we wanna call it that, and if you happen to know somebody who's in this situation, this is just some guidance that you could use to help you. But I completely see what you're saying and really agree with you, especially for a new build. There's no way to know or
I would
anything
say
like
new
that.
build, I agree with you on the new build.
Yeah, you wouldn't do this one. I do too.
Well, even if you were to take, and again,
If you were deliberately in this situation, like unexpected, let's say one of your family members ends up needing dialysis next week, and you want some, like, what do I do now? This is really just something you could point somebody to, hey, you probably should follow these recommendations, this is some guidance of what you could do. If you wanna follow it, you can, but if you don't, maybe you just plug a thing in that works just fine, and you never have no trouble with it.
but the next step beyond that is the installation of standby power.
UPS,
So-
Yeah, that,
So and it says that in Annex K, I believe, in there, that if this is like truly life support type equipment, the first thing that they have built into that is battery backup already. That will give you
Correct.
some backup power for whatever amount of time.
My father had the two, Eric, we had to have that. We had one upstairs in his bedroom and one downstairs in the living room. He could deal with a short amount of time, but they did have oxygen bottles as his backup. We had 8 oxygen bottles to use, and that would sustain him if we needed to get him somewhere. So the oxygen machine didn't run on much. It was just a purifier. First slide you showed. We had long cords, and I could follow my dad and say, he's in the bathroom, because he would have a 30-foot cord to go to the bathroom and then go back.
So, for me, I think it'd be hard if this ever would be a code requirement.
I agree with that, unless you have the special circumstance, like I was saying, they would remodel.
Well, I would say ever, like, I don't.
You still can't enforce it no matter
Right.
what.
No, you can't enforce it right now.
right
If
now,
it was a code
if
section.
it were a code, you would be able to. If you take a look at it, similar to an EV installation.
Yep.
That is something typically is put in, even in the newer homes, and that's an optional in some new homes, right? But you have to do it in a certain way, even if it's an existing home and somebody all of a sudden buys that Tesla, and now they want that truck. So it gives you, in that aspect, gives you something. The plan reviewer needs something to go off of.
Right.
And so this gives the plan reviewer something to go off of, so that the inspector, when he shows up, he knows what he's supposed to be inspecting. He's inspecting off that plan review.
I wanna say that in previous code cycle, there was some discussion, I wanna say, so maybe getting close to this, as being a requirement, was, I feel like somebody was like driving towards, we need, individual branch circuits to bedrooms. Like, that might be getting close to that thinking.
Yeah.
Because of the need for more of this type of equipment, is typically gonna be in somebody's bedroom.
Well, and the trend is aging in place now. So old people are staying in their homes longer, and like you said, they may need to use oxygen machines, they may need to use some other form of comfort care.
Hospital bed, lift chairs, take you up one floor to the next, right?
That lift chair is usually DC.
Right.
You have to charge them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a charger somewhere, so.
It plugged into just an old freaking DC plug. I have it on my stairwell.
Okay. But, yeah, but then you take a look at, oftentimes today, a lot of the code that's going into the NEC is driven by a manufacturer.
And the insurance company.
That could be too.
Well,
But you have that drive behind it, so there's an economic drive
Oh,
behind it.
absolutely.
So,
most lift chairs are DC because of power loss. They just have a trickle charger control.
So for now, it's not a code requirement. We'll see what the future does. One more here. So one of my own kids was on one of these Billy Rubin blankets. So I don't know if I call that life support, right? But it was needed.
what's
It done some.
What is it?
So when one of my kids, when they were first born, they didn't eat as much as they should have, so they weren't flushing their body out. And he got jaundice.
Oh, okay.
And so they use a Billy Rubin blanket. So this thing's got a light that he would lay on and it would shine on him. I don't think it's warm or anything, nothing like that, but just some type of like a UV light that would help to clean him up, I guess.
Yeah,
So-
sunlight will have that same effect.
Yeah.
Children's, they just put a light over them.
I missed one other thing on this. I should have added. So if you're in this, the last recommendation we'll talk about is to mark every other receptacle that's connected to the circuit that same life-saving machine is on. So when you go to plug something in there, you'll be able to see this circuit is on the same circuit as a life support machine. And I think that language is also in
Yeah, it
Annex
is.
K. There,
Warning, power loss risk.
I meant to have that on there.
Not overload.
So, do they mention anything about like a breaker lock where you're, like we do for motors for pumps for
I didn't
fire
see
suppression?
that would be a good comment. I don't think I read anything about a lock on the circuit. Some other safety and monitoring for labeling, in these recommendations, an audible alarm if the ME does not have a built-in alarm provided. Provide an external alarm that triggers if power to the outlet or circuit is lost. This is it, so I did have this. So labeling all other receptacles that are on the same circuit must be labeled with the following. So here's what it would say. It is warning, power loss risk to life support and medical equipment on the same circuit. Do not overload. So that's the end of this Annex K, this piece, but again, these are recommendations, not requirements.
I am continually amazed at how little other people know about how much load things are. It's like, hey, I got this table lamp, and I got this electric heater, and I got this air conditioner, and I got this other thing, and they all take electricity. And it's like, hey, the table lamp's piddling nothing, and the electric heater is almost as much power as you can get out of a whole daggone circuit. And people who are, not dummies, but it's like, how did you miss this in physics class or something? But
I wish I would look. I don't know if anybody knows what's an oxygen generator amp.
the
James?
oxygen concentrators,
I think pretty low, but
They're about 4 or 5 amps, somewhere on there. depending
yeah,
on-
because they're an electric motor.
They're an
aren't they?
electric motor. It's just.
It's a pump, I think it works kind of like a reverse osmosis.
Yes,
Builder,
yes.
except for,
So how
Air.
so if you have an oxygen generator machine, how flammable is the oxygen that those produce?
None.
it's just a
It's a
concentrator.
concentrator.
It increases the
It
concentration.
decreases the concentrate of the air with that you're already there.
It's not, is it, or you see, it's not like oxygen coming out of a bottle?
No,
No.
and the bottles, totally different story.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
I have those stored in the closet.
This is kind of a trick question. So oxygen itself is not flammable at all.
Right.
It's explosive, if you mix grease with it.
It supports fire.
So if you had oxygen and you tried to light it, it wouldn't light.
Correct.
It's not like propane or butane or anything like that. So oxygen, it will increase. So if you took this shirt, let's say, and you put it in a jar or some type of a whatever, and fed oxygen through that and kind of saturated this shirt in oxygen, it would burn very fast because the available oxygen is there, but the oxygen itself is not
Right.
flammable.
But the pressure it's under can cause issues if,
No, it will assist in the burning of other things,
correct.
but the oxygen itself will not light. If you had say you had a copper tube that it was coming out of, it wouldn't light. If you had it coming out of a plastic tube, that's why the plastic ones are dangerous, like that you stretch to the house, so they will burn. But kind of just a trick question, oxygen itself. So back to the regular rules. These are rules that we have to follow. So healthcare facilities, this is the one that's in my neighborhood where I live, kind of what's covered, obviously the building, and it even mentions some of these mobile clinics. You got some of these mobile MRIs and things that travel around. A couple definitions here, we're only like 3 or 4 of these, not many. So again, this is a building or portions of a building or mobile enclosures in which human medical, dental, psychiatric, nursing,
Obstetrical.
There you go. I'm no good at that. Or surgical care is provided. So that's the definition of a healthcare facility. The healthcare facility governing board. So these are the folks who are going to make the decisions about what's a patient care area, what room is doing what, and all those things. That's this governing body of people. The hospital, the definition of it is a building or portion thereof that is used on a 24-hour basis for medical, again, psychiatric, obstetrical, or surgical care of 4 or more patients. I always thought, like, where did the number 4 come from? Like, I don't know.
That would serve
I think-
to exempt things like we have a clinic at the plant where I work. And yeah, that would probably serve to exempt that because I don't think they have more than 3 rooms.
I think
Sick
my-
bay bed or something.
Yeah.
My grandma ran a hospital. She had 7 kids. So she would qualify, their home would qualify to a hospital because somebody was always hurt. Patient care vicinity, to sum all this up, it's 6 foot beyond the bed in any direction and 7'6" above the floor. It is the short answer of all of that wording there. And that's the end of the definitions we're gonna look at. This will be the quick one, so
Well, it's funny
reconditioning.
because they moved all those to 100.
Yeah, all definitions are in 100 now.
Almost all.
I think all.
I thought some of them that only pertained to that section stayed in that section.
I wanna say they all moved. If
They did, I was looking at it, they did. But I was thinking
I
like,
know for
the
healthcare,
governing body, that's what I've been searching for,
But-
10 minutes.
but for other, I know all of healthcare moved to 100, but I'm trying to think, I think every article did the same thing, that every article.
Because as we was talking about residential, so when we do residential, like say Ed does plan review, the governing body is gonna determine if a bedroom needs outlets and where, and which bedroom and all that, right? Not the inspector.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep. So one, I have a question on this one, and I've done probably more reading than I should have on it. Because one of the definitions is there is ambulatory care. What is ambulatory care? What?
Ambulatory is when someone can get up and move around on their own, but they still need some care. And there's a definition for an ambulatory bathroom. So you have an ADA bathroom. Well, ambulatory is just somebody who needs handrails to help get up off the toilet.
Because it's a defined word in 100 now, and I thought if they took the time to define what this word means, what is this place or whatever, but I'm thinking, I don't know that I've ever been to one. Like, all in my mind, I'm only thinking the word because it's so close to ambulance, but I'm thinking, I was like thinking, where would I go physically see a place that is titled ambulatory care?
A minute clinic or any small emergency rooms where they're not gonna do surgery, where the patient can move under their own power.
So would you think would an urgent care fit that then, you think? Okay. I mean, I spent a lot of time like trying to figure out exactly we're gonna go find one of these. I mean, that makes sense.
If you can walk in, walk out, that's ambulatory.
Okay. So I left that definition out because I didn't know what to do with it.
Well, they call it ambulatory healthcare occupancy.
Yeah. Yep. So reconditioned equipment, this is not 6, that's the same in most articles, if not, I think all articles. But it's not covered. Things like this, whatever somebody does to recondition one of these or something like that, it's not that stuff's not covered, not under the purview of the NEC. There's an informational note there that says patient care related electrical equipment is different from other electrical equipment that we would discuss, like we'll say GFCI receptacles cannot be reconditioned. Things like molded case circuit breakers cannot be reconditioned. So that type of electrical equipment is different than this type of electrical equipment. So but this is not covered, like, it's not covered by the NEC. Like, that's somebody else does that stuff.
Article 100 covers ambulatory healthcare occupancy definition.
Yeah, it's defined. But even when reading the definition, I still wasn't, when I was still like, trying to figure out where would I go find this at. So here's the guy where I mentioned earlier, like, I called this guy on the way here tonight, Mark Hilbert. He's the guy I mentioned that loves IAEI, got a lot from it, gave a lot into it. A great friend of mine, a guy who's taught me a tremendous amount. I thought I knew how electrical things worked until I met this guy. Like he was like a whole nother world to me. Like I never met a guy like this that I'm thinking, I thought I was pretty good till I met you. And then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like because he knew so much more than me about all the why behind everything. I'm like the nerd guy, like just on the word ambulatory care. I spent so much time, like it's useless at the end of the day, some of this thing. But this guy, great guy, learned tons from him. So I called him about the word redundant, so I'll get to that here in just a second here though. But 513, that gives us the A and the B. So the A is the raceway that we're going to use, and the B is the wire, the copper insulated conductor that we have to use. So just quickly, we'll just cover the first bullet here. This was just revised, there was no change. It was only revised for clarity. We discussed this even last time, I believe, that for wiring certain patient care spaces. I was hoping Matt was going to be here tonight because we talked about this also. I think we ended right here. But, so it says that there's an exception here in these patient care spaces that if the light the luminary is 7.5 feet above the floor. Or if the light switch is outside of the patient care area, the exception says that you don't have to do this A and B wiring. So, as I read the exception, either one could be outside of the space. If the light switch is outside of the space, then you would treat it differently, or if the light fixture is out of the space, you would treat it
Well,
differently. But Matt was saying they both have to be
well,
outside.
it says and, not or.
Right, but if you read that wording, so let's read that wording. So luminaries more than 7.5 feet above the floor, and light switches, and switches located outside of the patient care vicinity shall be permitted to be connected to an equipment grounding conductor return path complying with A or B. So when I read that, it's like there's a little bit of hesitation there with the and.
The and is you have two conditions, they both have to be met for it to not have to be, I think, where we are, if you think about.
So I asked the guy, so Mark Hilbert, he's on the panel, so he's on panel 15 who has purview over this, and he said he always considered it, you could pick one or the other, that they
Right.
both did not have to be outside of the space.
So if you have, your light fixtures are 8 feet, which are outside the space, but the switch is inside the room,
Inside the space, inside that
Inside the
6 foot
space.
area.
right?
Right at the head of the bed, for example.
So at that point, you have to you supply it with your HCFC cable or
The light,
conduit
for sure the light switch, yeah.
but
Yeah.
everything. You have to take that redundant ground all the way back. You can't just go from switch to light.
No.
You have to carry it all the way back to the
Well,
panel.
But, do you?
So that,
Because you can supply that light without the redundant from your home
Which
run.
is why the switch, which has to be redundant from that switch up, it would not have to be.
so really, this discussion is
Switch has to
really,
be-
we're saying this,
Has to be from the power supply.
one or the other, or both, or
That's the
whatever,
way I look at it.
if they're not in or out of the space. So if I think some of this you have to be like,
I had one like that, where the
So what-
switch was in the patient care room, you had the HCF to the switch box, from the switch box up to the light. And from the first to second line, because it was greater than 7.5 feet, they did not have HCF cable jumping.
so how do you handle that?
I didn't see any problem.
You have problem?
That's the way
Because they
I
had the
do it all the
HCF
time.
going to the first.
What if it didn't go to the first light? What would you have done? Well, I guess you would have, I guess,
Because the switch was in the patient.
There's
room.
always it wouldn't have mattered as long as it went past the 7'3", you could have set a box and then went to a light or whatever. But yeah, I just always jump to the first light and then after that, regular NC.
But you have to
what if you
ask,
said the
you
switch?
have to ask the question, what's the purpose of the redundant ground?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, the main contact, I always assume was the switch.
So since we're here, so this is what I talked to Mark like a couple days after our last meeting to ask him about this scenario here about the light switch or not. But tonight on the way up here, I called him on my way up and said, let's talk about A and B here. And I didn't use the word redundant. I said, what do you call that? What do you call that between when you have to have A and B? I said, I'm not gonna use the word. I said, what do you call it? And he started laughing. He said, I would call that supplemental grounding, not redundant grounding. And I said, why? What's the why? He said, somebody do it here on the fly, like, ask Siri, or what's the word redundant mean?
More than one.
And either one can function.
Either one will do the job.
So the word redundant means not necessary. If you look it up by definition, the word redundant means not necessary. So he said that's why. He said it fits. He said we all use it. He said he used to use it as well. And again, that's where I've done a ton of reading. Up until 1986, and the 86 NEC used the word redundant. Itself, the NEC used the word redundant.
Yeah.
But in 86, it stopped. It didn't carry that on, or it ended in 86.
The British
Not
believe
necessarily till it's needed.
But if you look up the definition of redundant, it means not needed.
Not or no longer needed.
that's what the British use for canning your ass. They'd say, you're made redundant, that means you just got fired.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So when you think about just that definition part of not needed, I don't think we don't like that. I don't think we would like to say that about a wire or a wiring method to say that's not needed. Because
Not a proper definition. So
so
what it says in the commentary, it says the branch circuit wiring method used in these areas is one component of a two-part ground fault current path arrangement that is unique to a patient care facility, so they don't call it redundant either.
so the NEC doesn't use the word redundant either. At least not in this. It might use it in some other places. But I'm just saying that because I brought that up last time, and I thought I wish I would have known more. I felt like I spoke last time and didn't know enough about what I was saying. But so I spent some more time this past month thinking about this more, making some more phone calls. But redundant's probably not the best word probably to use for anything we do in the code, if we think about it as saying not needed.
If you look up the definition in engineering, it says not strictly necessary to functioning, but included in case of failure in another component.
Yeah. So you would have your normal ground, that one you have to have for functionality. Whereas the redundant one, you don't have to have it for the functionality, but we're asking for it
Because
to
it's
be there because you want that assured,
safety.
It's a backup.
The backup.
as a backup. Like, we use the word like redundant power supply.
We use redundant when we're having two circuits. We want it to fail over. It's redundant. We don't need it, but we want it so that if anything happens.
But I think in this scenario, we do want it,
Correct.
and maybe we would even say we need it. Although technically, it would still function without it, but we want, I don't need 2 kids, but I got 2 of them. Or whatever, I don't know how to word that. I don't know how to say it without saying I don't know. But I actually got 3, so, but anyway, so just something to think about. I mean, at the end of the day, my buddy Mark, he said, I don't care what somebody calls as long as you do it. So I thought that was a good thing to say. Like we call it whatever you want to do, you just got to do it. So
Well, they they changed some of that, Chad. So when it says luminaire is more than 7.5 feet above the floor and the switch located outside the patient care vicinity, so it doesn't necessarily mean the room. Depends on how big the room is and if you know where the patient care vicinity is. Shall be permitted to be connected with common ground path, complying with the requirements of 517.13A or B. So if you have a raceway or a sheath that qualifies for Part A, or you have the equipment ground conductor qualifies for Part B, you can have one or of the other. Now, it used to probably say A, I think, and not B. That's new, that A or B. What 2017 say? Do you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wonder if that was part of some of this reorganizing maybe.
Yeah, cause see, the whole text is highlighted, but I don't have my 2017.
I think sometimes when the whole thing is highlighted like that, they just move that whole thing from one spot to another.
Yeah.
And no change was made, they call it reorganizing. Because in an exception, what they try to do, sometimes they have a whole list of things, you need to do this. At the very bottom, have an exception in the code. And it's hard to tell, well, what did that exception apply to? Now, one of the targets, one of the goals is that if you have an exception that applies to number 3, then it's gonna be right below 3. It ain't gonna be at the bottom of the list anymore. It's gonna be right where it needs to be at. So the exception will immediately follow the rule.
Are you seeing a triangle before that, Joe, when you read it, is there? is the
Well,
triangle
it didn't
just
used
gonna
to say
that
A or
change?
B. It
Okay.
said one or the other. I was trying to look, I was trying to find 2017, see what it said.
So keep looking there, Joe. I'm gonna keep going for time's sake. So the point of this is, whether we agree or don't agree, ask your inspector, or your inspector tell the contractor whether both the switch and the light have to be out, or one is good, one or the other. But if, let's say you had let's say by chance they both, the light switch and the lights were outside of the patient care vicinity, you only have to follow A or B, which is the very last point of that exception, the very last words there. So you can use a raceway if you want to, or just the conductor if you want to, if both are outside of the space. All branch circuit supplying, so again, we're still in A. Patient care areas must have a reliable ground fault current path. This shall be achieved through the installation of a metal raceway system using cable with metallic armor sheath. The raceway or cable or sheath, the sheath must serve as an equipment grounding conductor. That's in 215 or 250-118. We're going to go quick here. There's 12 things that can be used. We're familiar with all of these, especially these first ones. We're very familiar. Number 4, there's some restrictions, right? So you have to use 6 foot or less. We have an amperage. There's a 1/2 inch to another side. I don't remember off the top of my head. So some restrictions, the same, almost mirrored, are for liquid type. The same restrictions apply there. 6 foot, only 20 amps or so, depending on the size. Continued here is copper sheath of mineral insulated cable, something I've only seen a handful of times ever. Really, the only time I've ever seen is where I work at now. So it's a cable. I get it's really not a cable. It's like the soft copper, like you see for plumbing, but inside of that soft copper is 2 conductors at least of supply and return, hot and neutral, and then the whole thing is encased in like a chalk type material. It's hard, like some type of a compound, and you're probably going to see it in a place that's got heat. That's where we use it at. There's autoclaves, things that make a lot of heat. So we use this mineral insulated tubing, I think is probably what it's called. I think I chopped some of that off. So, but you can use that. Again, the best way to describe it would be like soft copper that has conductors inside that's been filled with some type of heat insulating type material. MC, again with some restrictions. His restrictions though is it's got to be health care rated MC. Something I don't think you'd ever see, but it's in the list. Cable trays, cable bus, other listed metal raceways, and service metal raceway that's listed for grounding. So all those things would be permitted. Here's a quick one. Is hospital grade AC or MC required to be green?
No.
No.
No. I lost it. It didn't show up. I don't think I'm right on this after I've done some more reading. I think I got my date wrong on that. About the 71 NEC is when they started requiring this. So you can take a picture, feel free, but I think I might be wrong on this. I think it was in 1986 is when it was clearly intended that we have 2 paths. In the 71, they had something called a grounding bus system, where you would kind of plug almost like a jack into a wall. So they started down the path, it seems like, of requiring these 2 grounds in the 70s. And I think you can still see some of it sometimes where you can plug this wire into like a jack and then on the other end, you would clip it to the stand that's holding the bags or whatever else, so you could connect some of these things together. And what was going on, it said, from the 50s to the 60s was a giant change in in medical care. From you think back in the 50s or earlier, how many things would a patient be connected to in the hospital? It was very, very minimal amount of things you could be possibly connected to compared to today. And then that time they started noticing we have more and more machines connected to people. And what you got to think about is, let's say, to make it easy, a person's connected to 2 different machines, all right? And one of those machines has got a fault in it.
Goes to the person to the other machine.
And then that's it. So they started noticing, and if you're involved in some really invasive type work, so you're getting a calf put in, heart calf, or something like that, so our skin acts like an insulator. But if your skin is open, then you're connected directly to the heart with some kind of a machine because they're doing an operation on you. It was such I can't remember, it's such a small amount. Something that wouldn't bother you at all on the skin would kill you if you're having a heart procedure done. So they started becoming more and more aware of these things, that this machine faulted, but instead of clearing it that direction, it went through the person, and it didn't clear it that way either, but now the path, it went out the other side to the other machine back to the source. So they started noticing more of this. So from 1897, first edition of NEC, until the, I don't know, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, what was the most common grounding conductor?
Conduit.
The conduit, definitely. So where I'm at, all of those old systems, all that old stuff, none of it has an equipment grounding conductor of the wire type installed. None of it. It's all, and every time I go out to do an inspection or a walk down of a job, they're asking me, what are we going to do? There's no green wire here. Do we have to rip all this out and start all over again? This conduit's got 4 odd in it or 500s in it or whatever, but no green wire. I'm like, you're okay, it's fine. They're kind of catching on now, but when I first come in, they're like, what do you mean it's all right? Like, I said, that conduit's just fine. Like, there's no issue with it. If it's got good connections and all that, it'll work fine. So a metal raceway was the most common way, but that's where I say from the 70s, and I stopped kind of there because of healthcare, that's when we started noticing this more. We want a conductor also. In the 1965 edition of the NEC, there was even a table that would tell you what a conduit, so the first one here, a 1/2-inch conduit was good for 20 amps. This is from the 65 edition. And a 1-inch was good for 1200 amps. If you had EMT, you needed a 2-inch if it was on a 1200 amp circuit. So they took this out. This ain't in the code anymore. Again, I done all this reading, trying to figure out what was going on and what they do. What's the why behind this? It was kind of unclear what was going on, but it appears that the panel's reasoning for removing this was if a raceway was large enough to fit 10 gauge conductors in it, then it could handle the fault, because you're not going to get 500s in a 1-inch raceway. So it seemed like that was kind of more of the logic. And this was removed in the 71 edition. So, but that seemed to be like some of the substantiation behind this. Why was this chart pulled out? If it could handle the conductors, it can handle the fault.
Was it because they pulled apart?
No,
No.
no. No,
If they were using it as the raceway as a ground?
so let's go back to the 1/2-inch. So if you had a 1/2-inch, I mean, you're only going to be able to put a certain size conductor in that before you're just like, it physically won't fit anymore. compared to, so you're not gonna be able to get a 200 amp circuit. Or be
Check
up,
your pipe fill too.
the raceway is not gonna be able to, it doesn't matter if it's on a 200 amp circuit because it won't handle that size is too small to ever get those conductors even in it.
Gold wires.
So we're gonna wrap up on this. This will eat up the rest of our time. So we're gonna kind of jump to 517.60. But we're gonna go back in time. So 1968, a lot of things happened there that seem in the code. Article 517 was titled Flammable Locations, at which time it was much narrower in scope. So in 68, there was only like seven sections. That was it in the whole thing. Focusing almost entirely on the blank hazards of anesthesia blank, rather than the broad electrical safety of grounding requirements that we have today. What do you think? Do you have any idea on?
I'm guessing flammable anesthesia locations,
That's what I was thinking.
because
Anesthetizing.
ether is great stuff.
So in 68, it wasn't titled healthcare facilities. It was titled flammable anesthetizing locations. That was the title of it. So I think somebody said it already. We'll get there here in a second. So this was the whole 68. This was it. 7 sections done. Today, part 5. So this is still in the code. So this is where I'm going to talk about this. We'll end on this. But today it's titled Inhalation Anesthetizing Locations. So here's a little bit of some history. Up until the 50s or 60s, what was used primarily to put people to sleep? Ether seemed to be the most popular, but it was flammable anesthetics, which seems crazy. Like this.
I remember it, having my tonsils out.
You had
Yeah, it was like a wire screen that they put over your mouth, and I don't know, they sprayed the ether on there, and
so
it's like, okay, count backwards, and you know.
So we're gonna get there. So 68, it had a list. So flammable anesthetics are gases or vapors such as, I can't say all these chemicals.
Diethyl ether, ethyl chloride, ethyl ether, methylene.
Which may form flammable or explosive mixtures with air, oxygen, and nitrous oxide. So there's a list here. I'm not going to get all these. Well, kind of this column here, what they kind of smelled like or whatever. So some more of the history. So way back in the 1800s, they discovered this anesthesia. So this guy, they called it ether frolicking, which I wonder what they were doing. But they realized that these parties, so the history was these doctors, they were kind of more in the know about what ether would do, and they would take this to parties, and they would notice like, hey, that guy's bleeding, but he doesn't act like he even feels anything. Like he says he's good, when he should be like, well, my hand's killing me. So
Like P. Diddy's.
I was thinking more like Bill Cosby or something.
You know that.
So William Morton, he performs the first public demonstration of ether at a place called the Ether Dome in Boston, where he uses ether on a dental job and pulls a guy's tooth or whatever he does to it, and the guy's like, I don't feel anything, I'm good. So it doesn't seem like they were putting them completely to sleep at the beginning. They just know like you're like pain-free when you're on this stuff. So how was ether administered? This is where we get into why the code kind of dealt with this. So early 1900s here. So they had this thing called the
Schimmelbusch.
mask, which becomes the standard for the open drop method.
Alright, yeah,
So I've never met it. Did anybody else ever have this when you were younger? Or a kid or anybody? So I got a picture of it coming up here. So the risk was this. So the surgeons dealt with ether pneumonia, chemical ice burns on the patient's face because of the evaporation, the cooling, and the constant threat of operating room explosions. This was always a problem, always a threat. Even to the point that there's these stories, you can go read these things for yourselves, where like the room would explode. The worst ones were where the patient themselves had been breathing the ether and they exploded. Because we still do it today, cauterizing. My wife had a mole on her shoulder when she was like 18, 19 years old and had this mole removed on her shoulder. And I watched them when they cauterized it. I was in the room, and they put this copper pad under her leg, and I didn't know what I thought, what is that about? Like, what are they doing? But on the top, the doctor, she cut the mole off, and then she just basically just zapped that thing, and that's how they cauterized it, with the electric shock. And she just walked out with a Band-Aid on her shoulder. That was it. Well, during surgeries, same thing. You got somebody split open, guy or gal, and during the surgery, you cut something you shouldn't have, or you did cut something you shouldn't have, but you need to stop it from bleeding. Well, they would cauterize it with electric to stop the bleeding. Well, there's always this risk, of the explosion, because we're using ether to put these people to sleep. So this is a picture of it. What they would do, so this one's kind of sideways, but they would take these masks and put them over a person. So remember this. So this is what they did. So how much ether is needed? So when using this mask, there was no dials or readouts, no flow meters. The anesthesia was measured using a 2-drop low-tech but highly skilled method. So they would do a drop count was the input, and the clinical signs was the output of like what's going on. The output, what we're looking for, are they awake or not? And are they still breathing? Like, have we killed them yet? So to start somebody to put them to sleep, the anesthesiologist would drop ether slowly, about 12 drops per minute to get it started. I don't know, you probably don't remember how much they gave you, but they said it because if they gave you 12 drops, it wasn't enough that you would panic because of the odor. It was just enough to get you started going to sleep for surgery, whatever you were doing. Once they got you asleep, then they would speed it up to a steady stream, which it didn't say, because that would always depend on the person, I guess, of how much, and then they would slow it back down for maintenance rate just to keep them under. So 12 drops is what you need to get them started, and then we're going to speed it up after that. There was a bottle, this drop bottle method were used that had a notch or a cork with a metal tip, allowing the provider or whoever to control it with their thumb. So kind of wild, so I read all this, I'm thinking this is the craziest stuff ever. So, anesthetizing locations are still recognized in the NEC, so that the .60 is where you'll start to see this. Although flammable anesthetics are generally no longer used in the United States, they are still being used even today in undeveloped countries. Also, like there were people that was like saying if you're going on some wilderness journey somewhere, a bunch of people, like they're saying that's still a method of people today, even maybe in America, would keep that with them in an emergency. If we have to do something, we can give you some ether to be able to put you to sleep, to do some emergency job if we have to, out in the Arctic or wherever, because you don't need all the other complicated machines you would need to use our modern anesthetizing techniques.
Yeah, the mask I remember was like a piece of window screen molded into a mask shape, so it was maybe slightly more advanced. It was probably about 1969 or 70.
So yeah, they would just drip it on the cotton. It said, they would kind of try to get that cotton wet, that cloth wet, and that was the start of it. I'm thinking, imagine laying there and they put that looks like something off Hannibal Lecter. The gist of it, we'll kind of wrap things up with this. We'll see, maybe we'll get a little bit further. So, 51760A is kind of just saying that if you were having to be in this situation, which again, you're probably not going to be there, 5 feet in areas where flammable anesthetics are used, the space considered a Class 1 Division 1 location is up to 5 feet above the floor. The remaining volume up to the structural ceiling is considered to be above the location. A 2 storage location, any room where flammable anesthetics or volatile flammable disinfectants are stored, is considered to be a Class 1 Division 1 location from floor to ceiling. I'm gonna quickly, we've got a few more minutes, we'll go quick through some of these because there's another piece I'll cover at the end that's be very useful, I think, for us. So now we're in 518, assembly occupancies. So the change here is casinos and gaming facilities are now included in the list of occupancy, or assembly occupancy examples. This is, I was in Las Vegas for this picture, so casinos, I gotta go. It's like the very top floor of one of the hotels there. I wasn't in them. There was like a hotel bar at the very top of this hotel. It was like, it's a pretty awesome picture. I was there for an NFPA meeting, so you have to follow the rules to go with this. This is where I want to get to. This is where we get. So manufactured buildings and relocatable structures. So my buddy Mark Hilbert, we talked about a minute ago, he wrote this whole chapter. This was added, I think, in the 2020 NEC. So this all came from him, is where it began from. These slides here are on my own though. So the question really is, what is a relocatable structure? What's your guesses? What do you think? What's a relocatable structure?
The head,
Like an IU unit?
The job trailers.
Job trailers is really what this is targeting. So there's a definition for this also, is a factory assembled structure or structures, because you can make a double wide, single, or triple wide. Where I'm at, we got 10 wide, you'll see a picture here in a second. Transportable in one or more sections that are built either on a permanent chassis and designed to be used as other than dwelling units, and it does not have a portable foundation.
Permanent foundation.
Permanent, yes, permanent foundation.
So, I mean, that sounds like an IU,
People live in it.
not an
No,
IU
it
necessarily.
could be anything. It could be like a trailer, it could be the cell tower. Those are all IUs, those little buildings they're bringing in.
So I wondered about some of this because I've wondered about myself, but I know for sure it's AIM. We added this because of where I'm at. We have so many of these trailers sections. This is a one of 30 more at least that we have. So our problem began, it's like previous editions, there was a limit, I think, of 30 feet that you had to have your service to the structure. And I think we've relaxed some of that rules in there.
Schools do it all the time with classrooms.
So there were some revisions. So this was added in 2020. This was revised in the 2023. Some of these things were correlated with 550, which does not allow service equipment on structures without a permanent foundation. 2 or more relocatable structures joined into a single unit are permitted using chassis bonding conductor as a tap conductor. So there's some rules in there. How do we bond all these things together? And this is where I'm going to end. So what we were talking out in the parking lot. So where I'm at, my job is I'm an inspector. I do plan review, and I go on off-site, like pre-inspections for things we're going to buy, like for anything we want to purchase, procurement, depending on a lot of it's the price tag. But what we ended up doing, like regardless, any connexes we buy, like the Connex office things, I don't know what you call them, people call them different things, or trailers that we're going to buy, we go look at every one of them now. I don't care what the cost is, even if we're gonna rent one, we don't rent one of these without me going to look at it first. And these pictures you're about to see are the reasons why. So you guys who are inspectors, how far you wanna go, I guess that's kind of up to you guys. But what's behind the walls of these things? So the first one's not a big deal, like, not
Well,
scary.
yeah, you could stand a clamp on that cable, yellow cable coming in.
So I pulled this receptacle out, the connection fell, this fell apart right immediately, and I could tell by the screw head that this is not a machine screw. So I backed it up to kind of show it's some kind of a whatever screw they had laying
The
around.
router cut the cable. When they routed it, it cut the cable. The green. And that's why you got tape on the white and black, because that router bit also nicked that white and black. Guarantee you get that tape off of there. And look at that nice little cut around that plywood.
Yeah.
They used a router with an 1.5-inch router bit and jammed it all the way in there.
I'd say you're right, you know. So they get better though. Hang on, we're not done yet. This one, what's wrong? What's like one of the? What do you see wrong with this?
Can't even get to the bottom screw.
It was never even there.
It's not flow.
So I just I hit it on the wall and the whole thing's shaking. So
Gorilla glue.
I take it out, and again, so at our site, or when I go off site to look at these, I open up every receptacle and every light switch, every one. But that's just where we've came to. So we got this here, which not a big deal, but it's not weather resistant receptacle. It's outside. Here they start getting a little bit better.
Nice.
What's the problem with this?
See that plastic box?
There's no connector. I heard that.
Yep.
What was it? What else?
Non-metallic box.
Non-metallic box.
So you got a metal cable or armor. So the same would be true if you had PVC. You know, I mean, if you had EMT, you can do it, but you have to have some bonding in there. But you can't bond this because there's not even you got a connector even on the thing. Wires are cut on that probably too, right?
Well, it looks like
Here's another. It's a double. So I got two of this. Again, top and bottom on this.
Two wires under one screw.
Were these state inspected also?
So these all had the sticker on them. Like, yeah, there's everyone had that third party thing on there.
Wow.
So typically, on any IUs, when they're done, when you're walking through and inspecting these, you're not inspecting every single unit, or you're not inspecting the same thing on the units. And it's an these are assembly line systems. And so it's different than like when you're walking into, a multifamily and you're doing an inspection there. And what happens is the people putting this stuff together are so untrained, and you try to walk them and help them out, and you just.
So I've been to multiple factories where they make these trailers at. Like, I had more time we're nearly out now, but right now I've been on the assembly line where they're doing these, and I don't care if somebody's what race they are or not. When I was a kid, I was racist. I'd say that out loud. My family came from Kentucky, and I'll just say they raised me to be racist. I got out of that. I could care less what somebody is now. I'll say that out to start this next part. I'll go down to Georgia, and everybody there's 50 Mexicans, 5 black guys, and 5 white guys. And all the white guys are the bosses. So, but I get to the finished side of these trailers, and I just feel bad for some of these. There's these 2 gals who are doing the finished work on all the electrical, and every time the box was set too far in the wall, they would use a long drywall screw is what they were using. Whether it was a metal box or a plastic box. If it's plastic, I don't care. I'm not gonna sweat it, but if it's a metal box, you need to use a metal screw. And the right kind of screw that's tapped and threaded for the threads. Well, when I showed up, they said they had this white guy, Boss Hall, he said he'd never seen a long 632 screw in his life. He said, he told me they don't make them. he said, because I pulled one out, I'm like, what's this drywall screw about? He said, well, we needed it. I said, you need a long 632. He said, a what? I said, you need a long 632 for that box. He said, they don't make none. He said, they don't make one of them. I said, I'm telling you. So I'm arguing with this guy, and I'm telling him, hey, I said, these are coming to Ohio, or back to me. I said, I argued with him for enough time, I was probably mad. It's like back to the very start of all this. And I told him, I said, I'm here to save you money. I said, you can fix this now, because he was basically telling me he wasn't gonna fix it. I said, you can fix it now, or you can pay 3 times the price in Ohio to fix this. I said, because when it gets to us, you're not gonna be able to have access to it anymore, because it's a government site, you need a security clearance, all this stuff. I said, so you're not gonna be able to get to it, and you're gonna pay somebody else 3 times the amount of money you're paying these folks to do this work. I said, so either you can listen to me now, and you're gonna change those screws, or we'll do it when it gets to Ohio. It's up to you. I said, but I'm trying to save you money. He's like, I'm telling you, they don't make them. I said, go to the hardware store.
They come 2 inches long.
Some next thing you know,
3, 4 inches.
next time somebody shows back up there and they got a brown bag where they bought them by the pound at some hardware store, and I pulled it out of the screw, and I looked at that, and I looked at it, and I said, there's a screw that nobody makes.
Has you ever seen it added different?
Yeah, well, they're always sitting back in the wall.
So give me a few more seconds here, we'll get to the real good ones. These office connect, almost all of them's got a table in front of the panel. That's a code violation.
Yeah.
Now here's the best one. So this next picture is from Indiana. And this guy was proud of this. Like, because I'd already visited the factory once, and no, this wasn't Indiana. This was on the south end of Columbus at Mobile Mini. There's a Mobile Mini distribution place right off down the south end of Columbus. I'd been there a couple times, failed them a couple times, had problems, and this guy said, hey, he said, I got it this time. And this is what he showed me.
Yeah, he did. He got it. He got it.
He was proud of this. Like, he thought, I got it now. So he had cut. What do you do? How do you put 2 wires together and put them onto the terminal? And this was the answer. This was it.
Device can do 2.
That heater box is overfilled.
Look at that.
Over tightened.
So I show you this to say, and I've got 50 more of these pictures. We're done.
Did he ever figure it out?
It was so bad there that we told that place, we don't care what you do, but we're not doing business with you, period. You have totally untrained people. Now back to the Georgia, so I'm sending these 2 gals, again, they're 2 Hispanic girls, good workers, I don't care, that means nothing to me. But on the untrained part was when they had those long 632s, sometimes they're too long, and they were just chopping them off with an old rough looking pair of linemen's, and then they wouldn't thread into the box. I said, you can't do that. And they're like, we not know, what? And I brought a pair of strippers with me. I showed them, this is what you're gonna thread this in there and chop it off. They're like, wow, we've never seen. And I just said, here, you can have these. Like, this is for you, keep it. And she was like, I mean, it's like she's about to start crying, like nobody ever done nothing for her. No, but I feel bad for those people, like, it's not their fault. I don't care, like, what, like, they're in a bad spot, they're trying to make money for their families,
So
whatever.
you were inspecting for your facility or as an
So,
actual inspector?
I was inspecting for my facility,
Right.
because these trailers were coming
Who
to
the
us.
hell was supposed to be inspecting that?
They all
They have
have,
in-house inspectors, don't they, the IU companies?
these have like some third party they pay.
Yeah, that
But-
comes
but-
in-house and does it.
But I'll tell you this, so I asked them, I said, you guys got a third party inspector, it's what you told us when we made a PO with you and said, hey, we want 20 units, you told us you have a third party inspector. They said, we do. They said, but he never does what you do. Yeah. So that's exactly, they said he never looks at what you've been looking at. That's what they told me.
Obviously.
They said nobody's ever done what you have done. And they act like I'm crazy. I said, I'm just following the code book.
He an old blind guy. Probably.
So, to wrap this up is, how far do you wanna look? Some of these things, I mean, are dangerous. Like some of the stuff that they do in these trailers and connexes is crazy, cause they are untrained as can be, they don't know what they're doing. And this guy was proud of this. He took me to this box and said, I want you to look at this one now. Like, look what I did. Cause he thought I got it. Like, he is not gonna fail us this time. And that's what I pulled out, was that the thing right there. So, these job trailers, these office connexes, double wides, triple wides, whatever,
Be careful.
there's a mess inside of those things. So, all right, that's it. We're done.
I'm serious.
You keep the next month, Joe?
So how much history do you know about the plant down there?
I've been to like 5 factories down in Georgia.
No, I meant down,
In South.
yeah.
I've been there, I don't know how many times, but every time it failed. I went there, so again, we made a PO with them. So we're done with you, like, we're not, we don't care what you do, but you're so